From the Edge Media Studios in downtown Indianapolis, this is Indiana Issues. Here's your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz.
Hello, and welcome to Indiana Issues, the public affairs program. We go beyond the headlines and sound bites and bring you Indiana's newsmakers in their entirety. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, the editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Been away for a while, but now we are back and ready to go. Donald Trump indicted, the city and the state getting into it, and a lawmaker arrested for a DUI. So lots of things to talk about. Our guests today are Republicans, former state senator Jim Merrit, Libertarian Mark Rutherford, and Democrat activist and operative Lindsay. So folks, let's go ahead and get started. The big news of the day as we record this program is, of course, Donald Trump's indictment for dealing with classified information, holding on to it, obstruction of justice charges probably in there as well. So Jim, let's start with you. Your thoughts.
Well, it's we don't know everything. It's still sealed, the indictment, but I can't help but feel that the whole political system is under attack. And seemingly in tatters. It's a very concerning situation to me that you talk to somebody in a restaurant or on waiting for a stoplight, and you ask them about how they feel about politics, and I would imagine they would say a pox on all their houses, and why should I pay attention? And we all know on this program that it's so very important to have a two-party system, a government that's not corrupt. We have a president that has allegations against him. We have a former president that has allegations against him. And Abdul, I'm really worried about the system itself. And so we will learn a lot in the next couple of days. And I don't think it's going to be anything good. And so I like to think optimistically, but they're making it very difficult to think positive right now.
Lindsay, what are your thoughts on all this as well? And what about what Jim just said about our political system, that once again, it just sort of deteriorates the public trust that people have in their government?
Well, it's certainly a sad state of affairs that we're facing right now. And while a lot of news is still coming as we even by the moment right now, as we tape this, I think it's clear though that the fabric of our democracy is strong. And I've always been a really the legal process, the judicial process is such a slow one for a reason. And I'm eager to see, of course, what the indictment says. I'm eager to see how the legal system handles this extraordinarily unprecedented case. And I'm eager to see what happens, almost perhaps too eager, just as a fly on the wall with the interest in our government as it is, as we all, I think, share here. So I'm eager to see what happens. I have extraordinary faith in the legal system to do what's right. But what a sad state of affairs that Donald Trump has degraded our country to this level.
Mark, your thoughts on all this, and does this undermine our political system?
Well, yes, it does undermine the political system, but we always have things that are doing that. I'm old enough to remember quite well Watergate and what that was all about, and hearing all those hearings. But it took a long time before it kind of came out in the wash. We just don't know, and it takes time to do that. As far as the indictment has not been unsealed. We don't know what the specifics are. What I do know is that the espionage laws and other laws federally, they tend to be written very broadly and not specifically, and that can be a problem, and that's often a defense, but you don't know. The assistant U.S. attorney who's been assigned to I believe he's a special prosecutor on this case, he has a reputation for being thorough, and the one thing I noticed this morning is the indictment has been filed in a court in Florida, which Trump's pretty popular. And I've seen U.S. attorneys and assistant U.S. attorneys file stuff in an area like Washington, D.C., because it's heavily Democratic. Trump's not that popular with the people who'd like to be on the jury there. And the fact that he didn't try to do that, he tried to remove a legal issue, which is where should it be filed, by going to Florida where Trump lives. And so that's one less issue for him. And it shows that he's really thinking this through, at least from what we can gather. But I have no idea what's going to happen. And it does undermine, this is a time when the political system is really, really messy and people are really having doubts about a lot of things. We got through Watergate, so that gives me hope that we'll get through this.
You're watching Indiana Issues, a public affairs program coming to you from the Edge Media Studios in downtown Indianapolis. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazi, editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Of course, we'll be following the Trump indictments over the course of weeks and months ahead. I want to change gears a little bit and go local. The city of Indianapolis and the state of Indiana seem to be getting into it these days on both ends of Market Street. On one side, the city, on the other side, the state capitol. Indianapolis City Council passing two bills. One, no turns on red. And also got the gun issue as well with the mayor, Joe Hogsett, actually talking about the city sort of increasing its gun laws and gun regulation. Lindsay, we'll start with you. What's going on between both ends of Market Street here these days?
Well, it's certainly fun to watch the ping pong back and forth, but having worked in both arenas, both venues, I think it's important to know that on this particular issue that you brought up with the no turns on red, the data has extraordinarily mushroomed in the past, I'd say 4 years since before COVID. The data I'm citing is 2018-19, and the pedestrian crashes and incidents with vehicles and infrastructure in our downtowns have always been too car friendly and have not been enabling a very economic centered downtown, so people can come and spend money here and enjoy their time in downtown Indianapolis and drop off a few dollars to vendors. So it's really important that we design this and do this right. And so I was really disappointed to see the inclusion in the conference committee report of 1050 to see that there was a preemption of the no turn on red. And that's important because, like I said, the data has shown that it's worse than ever. Indianapolis clearly had to do something, and I'm so glad that the council moved forward. Just don't understand why the city why the state legislature would have included that in House Bill 1050. So still have a lot of questions, but I'm glad that the city of Indianapolis did the right thing and moved forward on that.
Jim, let me get your thoughts, particularly on the gun legislation. The mayor talked about gun violence, about permitless carry and the whole 9 yards. Indiana, the law is pretty clear that cities cannot sort of preempt state regulation when it comes to guns.
It is quite clear on the guns issue, and most of the time when you're a legislator, you want to honor home rule. With the instance of guns, you don't want a quilt of gun laws from county to county, municipality to municipality. And I would have loved to hear the reasoning behind why the folks at the State House felt as though that it was necessary to create their own ordinance. I always thought, I don't want to be a statewide school board as a legislator or legislature. And two, I didn't want to create traffic laws. But I did feel as though that you had to have a cohesive, cogent idea of what gun laws should be, and all 92 counties would be under the same law. And so it's strange to me. I always wanted to hear the background of why this would be important, and I wasn't able to do that. But I thought it was an odd situation. The gun situation, I think Mayor Hogsett and the council and the supporters of the ordinance are wrong on this. And what's going to happen? You go across 96th Street into Hamilton County, and or you come into Marion County from Hamilton County, and what are you to do? And it's just a strange circumstance on both of these issues.
Mark, Jim brought up an interesting point about the whole issue of home rule, whether it is the no turn on red or whether it is the gun issue or some of the other issues that cities and municipalities face. Is it like Jim said, like sort of avoiding this sort of patch quilt of laws and regulations so people know what's going on from one country to another, or is it everybody's in favor of home rule until they're not?
Well, yeah, that often is the case. I'm for home rule until it gores my ox. And you just have to be tolerant and accepting that things will be a little different with home rule. To me, the major thing is the notice issue. And Jim touches upon that on the gun. How do people know if there's a quilt of different gun laws when they're crossing county lines? When it comes to no turn on red, you've got to have a sign that says so. And that's notice. You can't do it. So that's an easier one to tolerate, because whether you think there should be no turn on red or not, you know what the law is. The issue, though, is that the state wins. The Indiana, if you look at how Indiana is structured through its constitution and its laws and what the General Assembly can do about home rule, it actually has made it a little easier for municipalities and counties to engage in home rule since I started practicing law in the mid-'80s. But they can reverse that and probably would be upheld by the Indiana Supreme Court and all the courts, most of them. So basically the cities lose. They're kind of beholden to the General Assembly, and whether that's right or wrong is not the issue. And what the policy isn't the issue. It is when they're enacting the laws, but ultimately, if the General Assembly wants this is what they get. And then when it comes to enforcement, anybody who's targeted with this, who has a little bit of resources or money or connections, they're going to raise these issues that the city can't do it. So good luck, city. I think you're having a hard time defending these ordinances that we were talking about.
You're watching Indiana Issues. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazz, the editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Our guests on the program today are Republican Jim Merrit, Democrat Lindsay and Libertarian Mark Rutherford. I want to change gears a little bit, folks. Talk about Indiana's political climate. Been read interesting news this week that I just remembered. Mike Pence announced that he's running for president against Donald Trump, which we spoke about earlier. Mark, your thoughts on what do you think the vice president's chances are?
Well, I mean, he's a pretty seasoned politician. I'm not going to count him out. Right now, he's way behind the pack, but it's very, very early. And if anybody who's followed politics know that generally, I'll take Mayor Ballard of Indianapolis several elections ago. The only time I had a good idea that he might win was on election day working the polls. Before that, it was like, I think he's going to give a good old try and, make some points and maybe get a decent vote total, being the heavy underdog. So you just don't know, but you've got to follow the whole thing. So don't count Mike Pence out. He's been through some mistakes that he made in the past from a political sense on how to get voters to like him or to vote for him. And he's always been able to correct that later. So we'll see. He's got to be taken seriously. He's a former vice president of the United States.
Lindsay, your thoughts on Mike Pence and his run for the presidency, which he's been wanting to do since day one, I believe.
I think that's pretty clear that, Mike Pence has been very clear about his intentions. And I do worry for him, though, that not taking seriously while I appreciated his comments during his Tuesday speech when he announced about Trump, I do think that he should be concerned for having hitched his wagon to the Trump star. I really do worry for any of my friends who worked for the Trump administration. I really do have concerns about the choices they've made personally. While a lot of us were running away from that administration, Mike Pence ran right in, and we all saw how that worked out. So I'm eager to see what occurs with former Governor Pence having announced this week. I'm excited to see what happens. I don't count him out either, but we live in strange times and we have seen crazier things. So I expect him to continue making his commentary as he does so dribly, and we'll see what happens.
Jim, your thoughts on Mike Pence running for the presidency? Good idea, bad idea, or just an idea who the voters will make that decision eventually?
Well, the vice president's been a friend of mine since college. And I was asked recently, a week or two ago, if he had a chance. And I said, I didn't think so. But he's had a really good week. In his speech, he could say that he's looked Xi in the eye and he's met with Putin. Not many people can say that. And his integrity, his ability to speak to the camera, the way that he can walk into a diner in Iowa or New Hampshire or South Carolina and come out an hour later knowing everyone by their name and making a lot of friends. So I think he's had a very good week. He's a winner this week. And I like the rest of us, I wouldn't count him out. And when you look at his announcement was so smooth compared to others that he's got some really professional people behind him. He's got money, he can debate, and he's got the energy. And he's going to be on the dais in North Carolina later on this week with their party convention, and DeSantis will be there, as well as President Trump. And so we're going to have some real comparisons and some real idea come July if the vice president has some momentum. And I seem to think he's got some momentum right now.
You're watching Indiana Issues. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazi, editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. We're going to take ourselves a quick break. We come back, we'll talk about the governor's race, also state lawmaker charged with DUI, and political predictions from our panel. You're watching Indiana Issues. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Indiana Issues. I'm your host, Abdul-Hakim Shabazi, editor and publisher of IndyPolitics.org. Our guests today on the panel are former Republican State Senator Jim Merrit, the Libertarian Mark Rutherford, and Democrat activist Lindsay. Okay, folks, let's talk about the governor's race coming up next year. We've got 3 Republicans so far: Eric Doden, former head of the IEDC. You've also got Suzanne Crouch, the current lieutenant governor, and Mike Braun, U.S. State Senator. And on the Democrat side, Jennifer McCormick. Jim, we'll start with you. How do you rate the race so far?
Boring. I think that
don't hold back, my friend. Let us know what you really think.
I think it's boring, and I think the candidates have missed 6 months where they couldn't raise money because by law they can't during the session of the General Assembly, and I wish they would be coming with policy ideas that are going to be a part of their campaign, and I believe that Senator Braun ought to leave the Senate and come home and run for governor, and I think that if Curtis Hill gets in, that will add a lot to the dais, and I haven't seen much of Doden's campaign in Marion County, and so the most excitement this week was Micah announcing for lieutenant governor. And so that's the reason behind it. Is just there isn't a whole lot going on other than the candidates probably showing up at community meetings. And I do believe campaigns are designed to offer ideas, not just raising money. And so I hope it gets a little more exciting this summer.
Lindsay, let's ask you, on the Democrat side, you got Jennifer McCormick announced she's running for governor. There may be another 1 or 2 Democrats get in the race inevitably. Your thoughts on the Democratic side of things?
Well, I haven't heard about any other Democrats getting into the race. Obviously, the focus is on Jennifer and the work that she's going to be able to do leading in. I am curious. I know you asked me for my comments on the Democratic side of things, but there's just really not a lot going on that side of things right now, aside from Jennifer. All of the interest is really on the GOP side, where we have an attempted hijacking, essentially, of the convention with Micah's announcement this week. I mean, that throws a lot into I don't know if you want to make this into a process story, but that essentially is where kind of the interest for us Politico nerds lies, because that changes a lot. And when you have a rumored lieutenant governor candidate of Greg Pence, Mike Pence's brother, current congressman, forgive me, Pence, that throws into it a big wrench. And so listening to all of that dribble out of the State House during the legislative session, where we saw, Congressman Pence a few times ducking in and out of the lieutenant governor's office, and he was in the State House a number of times. That's not uncommon for any elected official to be at the State House, but still, it was curious for us to see happen on the third floor. So I thought it was interesting, the announcement this week. While I appreciate all of the interest in the Democratic side of things, I really think the attention's on the GOP side. So forgive me for not focusing on the Democratic news, but there's really not. I agree with the snoozy comment. It's really kind of quiet right now.
No worries. Mark Rutherford, will Libertarians have a candidate for governor this go around, and what are your thoughts on the governor's race so far?
Well, Donald Rainwater's already announced, so he's an announced candidate as well. And Libertarians, that doesn't mean he gets their nomination, but I think he has a huge, strong edge on getting it based on what he did in 2020. And the support that he's getting seems to be consistent with the support he had in 2020. So that's going to be a very interesting thing to see what happens. But one thing that we all know is that every election is different. So we'll see how it works and the dynamics behind the election, what they ultimately will be. I agree with Jim's comment. So far, it's boring. I'm kind of surprised. I did get the opportunity to meet and actually talk alone for a little while with Eric Doden. And he was very interesting, very personable. He needs to get out there more, but that's the thing. You got to get out there now, and you got to introduce yourself to voters. And Marion County is pretty important, even though it's more Democrat than Republican. A lot of Republicans here vote for governor, so he needs to be out there a lot more, in my opinion. So I hope it does get better, and that there is more activity out there. And sometimes I think candidates spend too much time raising money, and they lose the prize because they need to get issues out there as well.
Well, speaking of races, also we have a lot of mayor's races here in Indiana this year, because it is an election year for our local elections. In Indianapolis, you've got the incumbent mayor Joe Hogshead going against Jefferson Shreve. And by the way, full disclosure, I was a candidate in the Republican primary, came in second, so that's all out there, and so we're all good to go. And also up in Carmel, you've got a competitive race up there as well. Lindsay, we'll start with you. Your thoughts on the mayor's races?
I think Miles is a great candidate up in Carmel for mayor, and I'm really looking forward to leadership that is continuing the leadership trend up there with current mayor Jim Brainerd. I'm really eager to see someone who's capable of filling those big shoes. And those are both of the candidates, to be honest with you. Both Sue and Miles are great candidates, and I think that's going to be a real sleeper of a race to watch, and I'm eager to see Miles eke it out.
Jim, your thoughts on the mayor's race, even though you were a candidate actually 4 years ago.
Right. And Lindsay's correct. That's going to be a race. I don't think it's going to be a sleeper. I think we're all going to be watching Carmel. And the Democrat Party has made inroads into Hamilton County and Carmel specifically. And Zionsville's in Boone County, but just had a Democrat mayor. And so that race between Sue Finkham and Miles Nelson is going to be something to watch. And I think Sue wins it, but I think it's going to be very close. With Marion County, it's going to be very difficult. And I've said this before, for Jefferson Shreve, he's going to need a break or two. Election day is not really election day anymore. We start voting early. And so the Republican Party hopefully has learned in the last couple of years that you've got to have a campaign towards early voting rather than just election day. And that's where Republicans like to focus in on, and that's when they vote. And so it's going to be a very uphill climb for Jefferson Shreve to win. Obviously, I'd love to see that happen. He's an old friend, and he'd be a very good mayor of Indianapolis. And but it takes working in the Black community, and it takes having independence flow your way. And it's just Abdul, you know this. It's something that it's shoe leather and guts and a little bit of courage and a little bit of luck. And so that's going to be very interesting, those two. You know, Evansville is going to have a new mayor. There's a lot of turnover, and Zionsville will have a new mayor. So, it's there's not too many cities like Noblesville and Fishers that are going to reelect their mayors for another 4-year term. Lots of turnover in the mayor ranks around the state of Indiana.
Mark, let me get your thoughts real quickly here.
Yeah, Miles Nelson, I don't know how the Democrats get a finer person to run for them to do stuff. He's good at politics. He's good at working hard. He's good at articulating his policy. The problem he has is a numbers policy. I'm looking at the primary results I have in front of me, and there were almost 13,000 votes for the Republican candidates in the primary, and he got 2,400. Now, I know there was nobody running against him, but it is a problem. He's got to do everything perfect if he wants any chance of beating Sue Finkham, and Sue's a formidable candidate herself. Good political wit about her and her teams. They're very well organized in a very tough primary. We're all three candidates in the primary there got over 4,000 votes. It was pretty close for something like that. So, but he also, the benefit the Republicans have is they got Matt Snyder and Jeff Worrell running at large. They're good campaigners, very popular. So that will help Sue Finkham get more votes. But, the Democrats are much stronger, and the at-large candidate for the Democrats named Jake, that's what he goes by because it's easier than knowing his last name. I've met with him, talked with him, and he's not the typical we have no chance to win guy. He's going to work hard too. So Miles Nelson will have a team behind him as well.
We're watching Indiana Issues, a weekly public affairs program that goes beyond the headlines and sound bites to bring you Indiana's newsmakers in their entirety. Folks, we're almost out of time here, but I want to touch on this quickly. State Representative Jim Lucas from the Columbus, Seymour area, arrested recently for DUI and hit and run and some other things. Jim, let me ask you, how serious, difficult will it be for Jim to function as a state lawmaker with these charges hanging over his head?
It's going to be really difficult. He has something that is in his back pocket. It's summertime, and people really aren't paying a whole lot of attention to what's going on around. They're on vacation. They're taking their kids to camp. There's a lot of things going on. I think he's obviously innocent until proven guilty, and the next couple of months are going to be critical for him. But what we've seen in the media is not pleasant. And he's my friend. I pray for him, but I think he's got a long summer in front of him, and it's going to be difficult.
Lindsay, let me ask you, because Jim has been somewhat of a controversial figure in the Indiana General Assembly, will that controversy that sort of followed him around, will that help him or will it hurt him?
I'm not sure. I haven't been retained by Jim for crisis comms, nor would I accept him as a client. But I do think it's fair to say that he's done some worse things in his life than this incident right here in front of him with the OWI charges, etc. I think anybody who's defined by one instance in their background, that's a mistake to judge them that way. But I count Jim I judge Jim on his votes at the Indiana legislature and his stances. And I really do believe that he's going to have some trouble here moving forward past this, just given the high profile visibility that he likes to have. And so I would encourage Jim to do what he can to stay low, stay quiet, and stay out of the public attention as much as he can. That would be my counsel. But he's not looking to me for advice. I think Jim knows exactly what he's doing, and we'll see what's moving forward here in the future. But I will also tell you, I find really reprehensible the accusations about the Jackson County prosecutor, Jeff Chalfant, who is a consummate professional and will handle the case with the utmost of professionalism.
Mark, we'll give you the last word, my friend.
Well, I find Jim Lucas's district to be quite interesting, generally Seymour and a lot of the rural areas around that, because it's hard to predict. They tend to be more hard scrabble people. So this might, in other districts, this would be almost a death knell to his reelection chances. In his district, they may be more forgiving. They may have people they know who've been in similar instances. And they've been very forgiving on other things that Jim Lucas has said and done that it might not have been taken well in other districts, but they kind of like him there, and they may forgive him that. And we've seen that. I've seen it over the years where somebody does something like that. But generally, if they do something like that, you very quickly get an apology. And that's not what I'm hearing at this point in time. Sometimes you have to lay low. You may not want to do that. And the times are different. That may not be the right thing to do. But that's my observation over the years, is that oftentimes when something's very dramatic, but then there's other things that could be happening. I don't know if Jim Lucas is a diabetic. Diabetes, I know, can make you act weird if it's not regulated correctly. So we don't know what the defenses are. So that's where we're at. It's hard to tell, but it's a district where he might survive this better than other districts.
You're watching Indiana Issues. Before I wrap up, I'd like to do our political predictions and prognostications. Jim, what do you see in that political crystal ball? What should our audience be paying attention to over the course of the summer?
Curtis Hill's going to run for governor.
Okay, that was easy enough. Lindsay, your thoughts? What did you see in your political crystal ball?
I don't have a crystal ball. Oh, these are
I
not.
don't either.
These are not fun. I hate this question. Okay, so I think the Indianapolis mayoral race is going to ramp up in ways that are unexpected. I think Jefferson Shreve is going to make some more policy announcements that perhaps we didn't see coming out of we didn't see coming. And so I'll be eager to see how that's handled by the Hogsett administration. And I'm eager to see I think everyone's eager to see it be slug out. I think folks are eager to vote on this race, and I think people want change. And I think you'll see some interesting numbers. Now, I'm not one to think that it's going to be like 2007 levels with Greg Ballard upset disappointment, but I think it's going to be a significant amount of people voting in this race.
Mark, I'll give you the last word, my friend.
Yeah, I see a lot of things about 2007 in this mayoral race. Mayor Hogsett needs to take those seriously and do a better job than Bart Peterson did. Bart Peterson didn't have the opportunity of having seen it first and didn't react as well as he probably would in hindsight, although at the time I thought he was handling it fine until, again, the election day was the first time I started thinking, this Greg Ballard guy might win. But there are a lot of things there on poll numbers, some discontent among the Democrat Party regulars that is out there that they've had with Hogsett. Not all, but some. And it's pretty significant. So I'm right now predicting, I can't predict which one will win because too many things can happen.
All right.
But I will say that it's going to be interesting.
All right. Well, our guests on the program today have been former Republican State Senator Jim Merrit, Democrat activist Lindsay Ships, and Libertarian Mark Rutherford. And that'll do it for this edition of Indiana Issues. Always great to be back, folks, and always great to be here in the Edge Media Studios as well. We'll talk to you next time on Indiana Issues. Goodbye.